If you got your Bible, go to John chapter 11. John chapter 11. Now, while we're waiting on folks to get all settled in, let's do a little exercise. It's night, 2, 3 in the morning. You're asleep. Phone rings. First reaction. Who's calling you? What's the reaction?
Normal for me because I'm on call usually.
All right, so it's maybe work. Normal. It always emerges. And the first person you think is your mom. I think about my dad. First reaction.
It's always the wrong number at that point.
It's always wrong. That's interesting because in my line of work, forever, if the phone rang at that time of day, something bad had happened.
If it's midnight or 1 o'clock, it may be something from work.
Yeah.
Somebody has a question about closing or something.
First meeting, I asked the same question. One guy said, I said, what does it mean? Your reaction, he said, I forgot to turn the ringer off. And I like that response. I'd never thought about doing that. But, okay, so we've got, it may be work, or it might be a wrong number. It might be somebody that we care about. It could be if something bad could have happened. Jesus got one of those notes. He got one of those calls. It wasn't a call, wasn't a text, wasn't a Facebook message or anything. But look in John chapter 11. John chapter 11. All right? Look in verse 3. Verse 3. Okay? The sisters sent word to Jesus. Now, he's talking about Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. Okay? Now, we got Bible scholars in here. We didn't have many at that first meeting, though I didn't say that out loud. But what do you know about Mary and Martha and Lazarus and Jesus? They're really close. It seems like that when Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem, Bethany was real close, and he would stop in Bethany. That's where he'd spend the night. They'd feed him, gave him a place to relax, I think. You know, it's a good kind of friendship. Well, something's wrong, all right? Jesus gets the call, the text. He gets the message. Look at verse 3. Lord, the one you love is sick. Now, your reaction. You get a message. The one you love is sick. Your reaction is going to be what? Get there.
Yeah.
Get there. What's your reaction? What's your reaction? How bad is it? I'm going to ask some questions. And it's interesting, we have the same kind of reaction during the first meeting. There's some that it's like hair on fire, I'm going, and about half the time half-cocked. Don't know what's going on, but I'm going to get there and make sure I take care of it. There are others, I know people who will, their reaction will be, well, I'm going to act like I can't do anything about it, so they're going to put their head in the sand. So hair on fire or head in the sand and hoping it goes away, those are the different reactions. Look at Jesus' reaction. Look at Jesus' reaction. When he heard this, we're in verse 4. When he heard this sickness, he said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son will be glorified through it. Now stop. I want you to mark that verse because you're going to need it later. Jesus doesn't go off with his hair on fire, doesn't go off half-cocked. I got to get there. Neither does he put his head in the sand and ignore it, hoping it'll go away. What's his reaction? What's the purpose of this horrible thing that's taken place? He says that there's something involved in this that's going to give him a chance to glorify God. Now, hang on. What do you learn from that?
Even the tough situations can be used.
Even tough situations, there may be a purpose in those tough situations to get God some credit, God some glory, okay? Now, verse 5, and I love this statement because this just says what we asked him in to go. Jesus loved Martha and her sister, now that's Mary, and Lazarus. First word? Yet. But when he heard that Lazarus was sick, what did he do? Hang on. He heard that his best friend is sick. He heard that his best friend is sick, and what does he do? He waits 2 more days. Now, if you're Mary and Martha and you're getting the message, if you're Mary and Martha and you've sent the message, if you're Mary and Martha's mailman and you've delivered the message, and Jesus just waits, your reaction to that, your reaction. No, what are you doing? Do you not care? Now, honest, if somebody acts like that, what do you think? When somebody doesn't react like you want them to react, or they don't react like you would react, what do you think? They don't think it's very important. They don't care like I do. They don't feel about the same way I do. All those things. Now, what do we know about Jesus? Does he love Mary? Does he love Martha? Does he love Lazarus? He waits 2 days. He waits 2 days and then says, okay, fellas, we're going back to Judea. Keep reading. Let's go back to Judea. Now, what's the problem with going back to Judea? What's the problem with leaving where they are now and going back to Jerusalem? Last time you were there, remember, they tried to stone you. They tried to kill you. Well, Jesus answers them and said, well, there's 12 hours of, aren't there 12 hours of daylight? A man who walks by day will not stumble, for he sees by this world's light. It is when he walks by night that he stumbles, for he has no light. Now, they're listening to this thinking, okay, that didn't say anything. That didn't answer my question. All right. And finally, Jesus just said to him, listen, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to go up there to wake him up. Now, your reaction, don't look at the text. Don't look at what the Bible says. Tell me what your reaction would be. He just told you, his first reaction is, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to wait here. Then he says, we're going to go. And then the disciples say, well, if you go, you're going to die. And he says, I've got to go wake up Lazarus. Your reaction is? Y'all don't want to say it? Duh. He'll wake up if he's asleep, right? Well, they're like us. And sometimes Jesus said things that they didn't understand. Sometimes he says things to me I don't understand. He said, our friend Lazarus is dead. Look at verse 14. He told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. We're in John 11. John 11. All right, so you just saw your second thing you need to mark. Why would Jesus delay? He gets the message. Why would he delay? There's 2 reasons. What are the 2 reasons? God's going to be glorified, and people are going to be helped to believe. All right, now mark those 2 things down and remember them. Is it possible there's going to be some things happen in your life? There are going to be some things happen in your family, some things happen in your church, some things happen in your life that you're going to need to remember. Sometimes those things happen so God can be glorified and so people can be caused to believe. Remember that. Remember that. Now, point 1. First thing to learn from that. Is it okay to tell Jesus what you want? Is it okay to tell Jesus what you want? Yeah. Mary and Martha want Jesus to come do something about their sick brother. Is it okay to let him know? Now, does that mean he's going to react the way I want him to react? No. But is it okay for me to tell him what I want? We could sing this, Tell him what you want, what you really, really want, right? Could you tell him what you want? Yes. Now, I grew up being taught, or maybe I learned it this way, that that's not what you do. You don't tell God what you really want. You tell God what you think he wants you to say, so he'll do what you hope he'll do your thing, that kind of thing. No. Did Mary and Martha want Lazarus to be made well? Yes. Is it okay to tell Jesus what you want? Then what do you do? What do you do when you get him told? When you tell him what you want, what do? Number one, you listen to him. Listen to him. Number two, if he says it, that settles it. Believe him. And then wait. Wait for him to do what he said he was going to do. Now, look at verse 16 right quick. We'll just make a little side note here. I'm going to read this verse and apologize to Thomas for all those years I called him Doubting Thomas. All those sermons I heard other preachers call him Doubting Thomas. And I understand why they did, because after Jesus was raised from the dead and he appears to the disciples, Thomas wasn't there, so he doesn't want to believe it unless he sees it. And so we labeled him, we nicknamed him Doubting Thomas. I want you to listen to him here in verse 16. When Thomas, who was called Didymus, now, whoever changed his name to Thomas did him a good job, did a good favor, said to the rest of the disciples, let's go also that we may die with him. Is he doubting anything? Is he weak-willed? No, man, he's committed to Jesus more than the rest. We don't want to go because they're going to kill you. Thomas says, I'm going, and let's go with him, because if he dies, we'll die. All right. Now, point one was Jesus, when something comes up in my life I can't handle, tell Jesus what you want. Now, verse 17, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus was already in the tomb for 4 days. Tell me what that tells those of us who know what really is going on in life and really goes on. He's been in the tomb 4 days. What do you know?
Physically, he's probably decaying.
He's decaying. So there's a smell. We're going to find that out later. What else?
Well, there's been a lot of sadness and heartache in the morning.
There's a lot of sadness and heartache already gone on, right? And if it's 4 days, is it possible that the doctors made a mistake, that he's just real bad sick? No. This is a real deal. He is dead, and it's too late for Jesus to do anything about it. At least that's what I'd be thinking, right? Keep reading. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Mary and Martha to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Now, some of you have grown up going to Bible class all your life. Tell me what you know about Martha, not in this story necessarily, but what do you know about Martha? Tell me what you know about the personality of Martha.
She's kind of a doer. She's always preparing meals.
Yeah, one of the stories we're going to read about him is she's the one that's cooking and making sure everything's right, ready for Jesus, and Mary's not helping her, so she tells Jesus to make her help me. So Martha is the kind of take charge kind of lady, right? She hears Jesus is coming. What does she do? What does she do? She goes to meet him, right? And then I want you to read what she asked. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Stop. Give me a tone. Ladies, give me a tone. Be a Martha for a second. All right? There's a little bit of that frustration, ticked off, resentment, right? If you had, can you hear the emphasis? If you had been here, he would not have died. What's she telling Jesus? It's too late, and I think there's a little bit of that. Now, I don't know, but if I'm saying it, would there be a little bit of blame? Look at the next phrase. Look at the next statement out of her mouth. First word, but. So there is a little bit of irritation, right? If you had been here, he would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. What'd she just tell him? Yes, she's expecting. You didn't help me a minute ago, but you didn't help me when I called, but you didn't help me when I needed you most, but.
You owe me.
And I wonder if there's not a little bit of that there, right? Jesus says, and you got to love Jesus. Does he get all hurt? Does he get all pouty? Does he get all, oh my, what do you do? No. He just says, your brother will rise again. Now, hang on. Any real comfort in that? Any real comfort in that?
Well, not in the morning is, you think about it, you know the reality.
Long term, yes, there may be some comfort, but right now,
Not when you're mourning.
no, I'm hurting. You weren't here. I called you. Remember? I sent you a message and you didn't come. And your disciples told me you waited 2 whole days. I called you and you didn't come immediately. And if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. But even now, if you ask, God will give you what he wants, what you want. Your brother will rise again. That's not what she wants to hear. She said, I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. I've heard that sermon. I've got that doctrine down. And then Jesus says to her, I am the resurrection and the life, and he who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? What's her answer? Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who was to come into the world. So let's say it again. Is it okay to tell Jesus what you want, what you really, really want? Yes. Is it okay to tell Jesus how you feel, how you really, really feel? When you're bitter, when you're frustrated, when you're resentful, when you're scared, is it okay to tell him? Somebody that was this close to Jesus knows it's okay to tell him. So tell him. But what do? How do you react? Now listen, it's going to be repeated. How do you react? You listen to what Jesus has to say. Write it down, memorize it if you have to. You listen to what Jesus has to say. Number 2, you trust him. You believe what he says. And then just wait. Just wait and let Jesus do what he's going to do to make everything all right. And will Lazarus be all right, even if it doesn't happen until the last day? Yeah. But listen, believe, and wait. All right, now keep reading. Well, after she had said this, she went back to the house and she told her sister Mary, said, hey, the teacher is here. He wants to see you. He's asking for you. Well, when she heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet entered the village. Keep reading. In verse 30, Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews had been with Jesus, when the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing what? Supposing what? She was going to go out to the tomb. She was going to do some crying, do some mourning, do some grieving out there. And they followed her, supposing that she was going to go to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary and I don't know why I keep swapping that. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, her reaction. Now hang on. You're worried sick about your brother. You send a note to Jesus. He doesn't show up in time. The brother dies. The funeral starts. All kinds of things are taking place. You're grieving. Your heart's broken. Jesus wasn't there. There's all kinds of feelings, emotions going on. And then you hear, Jesus is here. He wants to see you. You run out to see him. What do?
What took you so long? You're too late.
And after she falls at his feet, she says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now, was she hateful? I don't know. Is she resentful? I don't know. I'm letting your heart give what you would do. Well, no accusation to Mary. Just what would we do? That's how we'd feel. Is it okay to tell Jesus what you feel? Is it okay to tell Jesus if you've got some irritation with him? Is it okay to tell Jesus when you've got some resentment? Is it okay to tell Jesus when you've got some fear? Is it okay to tell Jesus when you've got some doubt? Yes. Tell Jesus what you want, really, really want. Tell Jesus how you feel, how you really, really feel. Keep reading. Verse 33. Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping. He was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Describe it. Before you read the next phrase, describe it. What's going on with Jesus?
Do you think he feels a little bit guilty?
Does he feel a little bit guilty?
Or feel bad for their pain?
He feels bad for their pain. What's he feeling? What do you think?
I think that, they're kind of sharing the same feeling, I think. Who was it, Martha? Mary? Probably felt a little betrayed, like you could have done something but you didn't, and then so her reaction, Jesus might feel the same way back, like, what, you don't trust me?
Maybe he's feeling that. Maybe he's feeling bad that they feel bad. Keep reading. He asked them, said, "Where have you laid him? Where's his grave?" And they said, "Come and see." Verse 35, Jesus wept. Now, no definition of Greek words, no long exegesis of the passage. Just tell me, what did I just learn? What did I just learn about Jesus? Does he know what's going to happen? Yeah. Does he care enough, even though he knows what's going to happen, to cry with them? Okay, now hang on. Is that how we usually feel? When we're not getting from Jesus what we want, when we're not getting from Jesus what we think we ought to be getting, when we're not getting it the way Jesus we think ought to be doing it, what's our reaction? Jesus just doesn't care. Jesus doesn't love me. Jesus is mad at me. I'll give you 1,000 answers I've heard over my life. What's the truth? Does Jesus know God is going to be glorified in this moment? Does Jesus know that people are going to believe because of what's about to take place? Yes. Does Jesus know that even if he doesn't do anything, Lazarus is going to be raised in the last day? Yes. Yes and yes. And yet he still weeps. What does that tell me? What does that tell me? Jesus cares about us. He sympathizes with us. You mad? You sad? Jesus sympathizes. He cares how you feel. He wept. And the Jews looked at him and said, "Oh, see how much he loved him. Look at how much he loved Lazarus." Now look at the next statement, though. Verse 37. I'd like you to read it so you know I'm not making it up. What was hanging over the moment? What was hanging over? Jesus' heart is troubled because he sees the pain they're in. He starts crying. They all say, "Oh, he loved him so much." But what?
If he was really somebody special, he could have done it.
Either if he was really somebody special, he could have stopped it, or if he really cared about him, he'd have come and helped them. Either way, they're questioning Jesus. They're questioning either his ability to help or his willingness to help. Now, we would never do that, right? We would never do that, right? We'd never question Jesus' ability to help us. And we'd never question whether he was willing to help us. Yeah, he was hanging out there. And then Jesus says, verse 38, once more he was deeply moved when he came to the tomb. And he said, "I want you to take the stone." There was a stone that was laid across the entrance. And he said, "Take the stone away." Now, hang on. I need you to tell me, I need you to react how you would react. The body has been dead 4 days. There's going to be a bad odor. Martha tells him that. What's she telling him? What's she telling him? You're not going to want to do that. What's she telling him? Is it possible that she's saying, it's too late? It's not going to work now. I mean, he's already starting to decay. So if it's doubt, or if it's just, oh, you don't want to do that, I don't know. But I know my heart reacts that way sometimes. Is it okay to tell Jesus what you think? What you really, really think? That's what Martha's doing here. Martha's telling him, Jesus, it's either too late or he thinks you don't want to do that. There's all kinds of reasons. But what does Jesus do? He said, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? There it is again. Does Jesus know what's about to happen? Does he know that God is going to be glorified? Does he know that people are going to be caused or given reason to believe? Yes. And then he says, when they took away the stone, he looked up. Okay, so he's praying, all right? He looked up. Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me. I love this. I knew that you always hear me, but I said that for the benefit of the people standing here so that they would believe that you sent me. What's Jesus trying to do? He's trying to help them build their faith. Does he have faith that God's going to handle this? Does he know God is going to be glorified in this moment? Does he know that God is going to do something that's going to cause people to... Yeah, God's got this handled. So Jesus prays so folks can hear him pray so that they'll believe. And when he finished praying, Lazarus, come here! Now, the reason I did it that way is to see your reaction. And Doretta reacted just like they would have done back then. Because they're praying.
They dropped their phone?
And their false teeth. Okay. Jesus is looking up praying. Now, what are you doing when somebody starts praying? You good church people, what do you always do when you pray? You close your eyes and bow your head, right? So your eyes are closed, and then when he finishes his praying, he doesn't say in the name of Jesus, amen. He just finishes prayer, Lord, I knew, and I just wanted them to believe that you sent me. And then he yells, Lazarus, come here. So everybody kind of jumped. What happened? Look at what happened. Look at what happened. The dead man came out. Your reaction. Just, I know it's black and white, but folks, you got to be able to see this one. For 4 days, what have you been doing? For 4 days, the people are there. What have they been doing? Crying, hugging. Think realistically. When your family gets together and it's a sad funeral time, there's crying. But what else is there? Telling stories. And when the stories start telling, there's some laughing. There's some hugging. There's some crying. There's some real serious talks, real deep talks. And, now folks, think about our culture. Theirs wasn't any different this way. Lots of food. There's lots of eating going on. They're comforting. There's people bringing in casseroles. There's people bringing in desserts. All that kind of stuff's coming in. For 4 days, you've been funeralizing, right? I got to wonder if Martha's not ready to get her house back in order and get these people out of here. Would y'all please go? Mary is kind of lost in her moment. And then everybody goes out to the tomb. Because Jesus is finally here, and they've heard about him healing blind people and feeding hungry people and all that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, Jesus hollers at Lazarus, and Lazarus comes out of the grave. Your reaction. And I want your personal one. If you're standing there when Jesus hollers and a dead man jumps up out of the grave, your reaction. Run. I wish I wish our whole group was here, because I'd go through the room and I'd say, well, I know what you'd do, and some of you would just take off and run, and out of here. Others of you would you freeze. Did I see what I just saw? Did that really happen? Or I don't believe it. And I know you. I love you, but some of you be going, I don't think that's right. What's going on here? That ain't gonna happen. Brooks will do it. I'm telling you, I don't know if I believe that. What happened there? Yeah, and you'd want to make sure, is that really him? I'm gonna unwrap him and look at him, right? Others of us, your reaction would be, and I'm not going to point any fingers, but I guarantee you this would be her reaction. She would punch Lazarus or somebody. Don't scare me like, that kind of thing. Now, having said that, was God glorified? Were people given reason to believe? So hang on a second. If you could ask Mary and Martha right now, are you mad Jesus waited 2 days to come? You think they're worried about 2 days now? You think they've got any of those? No, those questions have been answered. They have his life. Now, when they show up at the auditorium Bible class, they may have those discussions, right? But the truth is, Jesus gave Lazarus the life back, that's what they wanted from the beginning. When I face things, when I go through things that I can't explain, when I go through things I can't handle, when they're way bigger than me, is it all right for me to tell Jesus what I want, what I really, really want? When I'm concerned that Jesus hadn't acted like I think he should have acted or hadn't listened like I wanted him to listen, is it okay for me to tell Jesus how I feel, really, really feel? When I think it's too late and I need to have a say about something, is it okay for me to tell Jesus why I think what I really, really think? Yeah. He knows it already, so why not tell him? Let it out. And then once I've done that, what do I need to do? What are the three things? Tell me again, what are the three things? Listen to what Jesus has to say. I don't know all the things that would have been discussed about why he delayed, but I know what he said. He said, I'm waiting here so God can be glorified and people can believe. So listen to Jesus, trust what he says, and then wait for him to make it all right. One more time. Walk through it with me, and then we're finished. There have been times we've asked things of Jesus that he didn't do what we wanted him to do, or didn't do it in the way we wanted him to do it. But in those moments, if I'll tell him what I want, tell him how I feel, tell him why I think what I think, if I listen to him, then I can trust him. And then if I trust him, I wait until he makes everything all right. And once that takes place, is God glorified? Yep. And are people given reason to believe? Yes. May he do that not only in that moment, but do it in the moments in my life and your life as we face those things that we don't know how to face. Handle those things we don't know how to handle. Okay? Let's remember Jesus.